Hello, my name is Matthew, and I read The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I read it on my e-reader, and I've never read it before. I've seen the animated movie when I was a kid um, at some point, and I remember really liking it. I've seen the Lord of the Rings movies, which I really enjoyed. I didn't love them, but I thought they were um, spectacular filmmaking. They were beautiful to look at. And I saw the first Hobbit movie. I think there's three uh, Hobbit movies as well, live action, and I couldn't stomach the first one. I watched it and then didn't carry on. But I picked up The Hobbit and I loved it. It was just a fun, cozy adventure story with perils and um, all sorts of fantastical characters and interesting creatures and an amazing world to inhabit. And so this is the story of Bilbo Baggins, and Bilbo is a hobbit, and he likes to live in a hobbit hole. And we get this wonderful, the beginning of the novel, we get this wonderful description of the Shire, the hill where these hobbits live. And hobbits are these little human creatures. They're much smaller. They seem to be kind of pot-bellied and um, baby-cheeked, hospitable, hungry little fellows. And they like to spend their time in their hobbit holes and um, enjoying meals and enjoying company. And then we have Gandalf, and Gandalf is a wizard, and we get the sense that he's more human-sized, or maybe a little bit larger than human-sized. So there's a scale difference between the little hobbit and Gandalf, and he comes into the Shire, and all of a sudden, Bilbo's world is turned upside down. They have a brief encounter. Bilbo goes home. He's in his little hobbit hole that has coat racks everywhere and all sorts of rooms and blankets and warmth. It feels like a very warm home, cozy, warm. And suddenly there's these knocks at the door, and we have a succession of dwarfs showing up. I believe it was 14 dwarfs in total that arrive at Bilbo's house, and they're there for a secret meeting. And hobbits are these very hospitable creatures. They like to host, and Bilbo's inviting everybody in as they come along, getting more and more flustered and beside himself. These dwarfs are also different kinds of creatures. They're much larger and gruffer. They have beards. They like to drink and sing songs and be loud and eat all the food. And finally, Gandalf arrives. We find Gandalf, the wizard, had some shenanigans and orchestrated this meeting to take place at Bilbo's little hobbit hole, unbeknownst to Bilbo. And so we get a plan for this adventure. The dwarfs want to go off and find this mountain. They want to find this dragon named Smug. And Smug has a giant cache of gold. And there's this backstory about why it's significant and how the dragon goes off and steals gold from around the land. And of course, Bilbo is not an adventurous sort. He's the kind of creature that likes to stay home and have his meals. And so we get this conflict. Gandalf is saying that Bilbo is going to be a perfect addition to the team. He's going to be the burglar, this mountain has a little side door, just the right size for a little hobbit, and Gandalf believes in Bilbo. And this whole scene I saw in the movie. They adapted the dwarfs arriving at Bilbo's house with all the songs and merrymaking, and the movie adaptation was awful. I remember just wincing at how bizarre the tone was, how long the sequence took to get over. It was not funny or clever or light at all. Whereas the sequence in the book is great, and it even has the songs. You have the dwarf songs, but in any event, this is the beginning of an unexpected adventure, and so off they go, and it's Bilbo and Gandalf, and then a whole crowd of dwarfs. With a few exceptions, they really act as a collective or a crowd instead of real individual characters. It works in the story. You don't need to know too much about all the dwarfs except that they're dwarfs, and they're on horses and different ponies and mules and things. And the adventure begins, and we start getting a sense of the world, the larger world outside of the Hobbit hole. And it's fantastical and imaginative. It's a world filled with enchantment and magic. There's, like we've said, there's hobbits and dwarfs and wizards. There's also trolls and goblins and shape-shifting creatures. There's gigantic eagles that can talk, and all sorts of animals that can talk, the wolves, and then the dragon. And elves, there's all sorts of different kinds of elves. There's wood elves and water elves. And Bilbo and Gandalf and the dwarves have a series of adventures and series of perils and pitfalls that they fall into. They run into trolls at the middle of the night, and Bilbo gets caught, and it's a fun sequence. Later on, there's this amazing scene with the whole group hiding in a cave. They're trying to escape the elements, and they're going to stay overnight in this cave. And there's a crack in the wall, and these goblins burst out. And in a flash, in a puff of smoke, Gandalf disappears, and all of the dwarfs and Bilbo are captured by these goblins. And Gandalf saves the day, and then they kill the king goblin. They're chasing him out of the cave. Bilbo gets knocked unconscious, and when he awakens, we have this terrifying image. It was one of my favorite moments. It's a descriptive element of Bilbo waking up lost in a dark cave, and when he opens his eyes, he can't sense whether his eyes are open or not, because it's the same darkness. It is so dark that you can't tell whether or not your eyes are open. And we get the sequence with Gollum. And Gollum is this creepy, otherworldly, unfortunate creature that lives alone at the bottom of a mountain, in a cavern that has a lake and a boat, and he's been consumed by this magical ring. And the ring, of course, is famous because of the Lord of the Rings, but Bilbo just stumbles across it, and this creepy Gollum and Bilbo have an exchange of riddles. So Bilbo is asking Bilbo is asking um, for safe passage to escape the cave. He just wants to get out, and Gollum wants to eat Bilbo. And so they're going to have these riddles back and forth, and whoever wins is the victor. So if Bilbo wins, Gollum has to show him out, and um, if Gollum wins, he gets to eat Bilbo. And there's a fun exchange, there's a little bit of trickery, and there's a narrow escape. And these adventures just tumble over one another. As soon as they narrowly escape one, they're falling into another one. They have to go through this black, enchanted forest, and at this point, Gandalf says he has to go. Gandalf has been practically saving everybody's skin through each one of these encounters, but he says there's more pressing matters, and so Bilbo and the dwarfs have to go through this enchanted forest, and it's dark and black and creepy. It's full of large spiders. We see threads, spider threads throughout the trees. Still haven't really seen any of these spiders yet. They're running out of food and water. They're told not to drink the water. They're told this by the shape-shifting guy who has a little fun appearance. And off they go. And their resources are becoming depleted. They run into these wood elves at first. They get captured by the spiders. They're being spun up. Bilbo is using his magic ring to escape and impress the dwarfs. They're gaining more and more respect for this little hobbit. I can't remember the sequence, but there's a spider sequence, and then there's a wood elf sequence where all the dwarfs are captured. There's the head dwarf and all the other dwarfs, and they're brought into this magical castle that has doors and locks of enchantment, and so they're not normal doors that you can get in and out of. But Bilbo had found this magic ring, and one of the qualities of this ring is that it turns you invisible, and so they hadn't captured Bilbo. All the other 14 dwarves are captured. Bilbo's following along, sneaking behind them, and he gets into the castle. The Wood Elves imprison each dwarf in separate cells scattered throughout the castle. And so no one dwarf is in the same vicinity as another. And Bilbo knows that he wants to rescue them, but he doesn't know what to do. He's sort of staying invisible and eating a little bit of food, walking around. He's mostly scared stiff, and it feels like time is going by. He's not coming up with the grand heroic plan right away. But finally there's an opportunity. They're going to have a big festival for the Wood Elf king, and so there's going to be less guards in the castle, and Bilbo had also made a discovery of a secret trap door for disposal of the empty barrels of beer or wine or liquor that these wood elves are drinking. And so he hatches a plan. He finds the gatekeeper, or the wood elf that holds all the keys, and he gets drunk because there's a festival going on, and he passes out in the hallway. And Bilbo gets the keys while he's invisible, and is able to go through all the castle because he's been spending time learning where everyone is and all the channels and passageways of this castle, and he manages to get all the dwarfs into this room that has the trapdoor without being caught. And one of my favorite moments is Bilbo makes the decision to return the keys. This security guard of sorts is still passed out in this hallway, and Bilbo goes back and he puts the keys back on his ring so as not to get him into any more trouble. And I love that detail. It would be one thing if all of a sudden all the dwarfs are missing in the castle and the man holding the keys no longer has the keys. There was something afoot. But for him to still have the keys, all of the doors are still locked up. There's no shenanigans going on. There's no tampering with the locks or the doors. But instead, all the dwarfs in the mind of the Wood Elves just simply vanished. And this is a world of magic and enchantment. I love that it's not out of the realm of possibility as one scenario in which the dwarves were able to escape. But they all go tumbling out. They all have to get in these barrels, and they tumble into the water, and the dwarfs hate it, and Bilbo hates it. And it goes on, and finally we get the big moment. And the dragon, Smug, does not disappoint. It's a fantastic sequence of a dragon, really well drawn. It feels larger than life. The dragon feels like a threat. The dragon feels knowledgeable. This is a dragon that can talk and be convincing and be cunning. They find the secret door. Bilbo, the burglar, goes in and he steals a golden cup, and the dragon immediately sniffs out that one of his golden trinkets is missing, and he goes on a tirade. He's coming out of the mountain and he's blowing smoke and scorching the earth, fire-breathing dragons, and it's terrifying. It goes along. There's the big confrontation, and it's satisfying. And then we have the return trip home. There's an episode where we learn a little bit more about the world that all of these things are taking place. And then the trip home really started fleshing out, and all of these other stories, anecdotes and things, how much larger this world is that we've been spending time in, and not just the landscape, but the history and culture of all of these different creatures. Very satisfying reading experience. My main takeaway was how imaginative, how much the imagination and creativity of this work is at the forefront. It's the shining feature of this novel. It's a fantasy novel, so much like the imaginative powers that you would find in the Metamorphosis by Ovid, or the Arabian Nights, the 1001 Arabian Nights full of genies and magic. Really impressive. At some point, I'm now interested in reading The Lord of the Rings in a way that I have never been before. That imaginative quality elevates everything about the book. It's a fairly simple story. Um, it's episodic. There's not too much character development, but we are immersed in this world that I want to spend more time in. I would love to read a whole book just about one of these hobbit holes. I live in my own hobbit hole. Um, so it was great. It was a great reading experience, a fun, quick read, um, and I think the obvious recommendation would be to move into the Lord of the Rings. I think it's the Fellowship of the Rings is the first one, and um, two others. But if there's anything else by Tolkien that you would recommend as a beginning Tolkien reader, please let me know. I'm not reading the Silmarillion anytime soon, but I loved it. I loved The Hobbit. Glad I read it. Super fun. Um, so thank you for watching. Leave a comment if you would like, and take care.